compassion should not be considered as a sign of weakness, but rather an essential element for providing a cognitive, administrative working environment. The keywords: compassion, seen as a sign of weakness, but it should not be seen as a sign of weakness, but an essential component for the good administrative working environment. Okay, the meaning is clear up till this, that the definition of compassion should be there in the introduction. This has been a common point by all of you. Then in the body, what mistake is being done is, you are writing about when you talk about the introduction, almost all of you talked about introduction as definition. This so far so good. Okay, now what is happening in the body? All of you are talking about, some of you are making a mistake of talking about compassion ka importance. Okay, then you're writing about social justice, then you're writing about the everything, equity, inclusive growth, welfare state. This is not linked to the question. See, importance. Don't write importance in general. So when you talk about social equity, welfare state, you are talking about importance of compassion in general. Okay? No, that is not the demand of the question. It says that compassion should never be seen as weakness. Okay? But an essential element for administrative working environment. So one, even those who have got it correct, they are talking about in the body only of one parameter, the compassion with the working environment. There is more to it. Try to read between the lines. Okay, try to read between the lines. What do we mean by reading between the lines? It says that compassion should not be seen as weakness. Where have we actually touched upon this in the body? When even if you write about importance of compassion in the working environment, have we not missed this statement? At least give a context. At least give a context that why is, you write about the definition of compassion and then you say that it is seen as weakness. It's like a building a story in your answer. So when you say you define compassion and then you write a statement that compassion is seen as a weakness, and then you elaborate that it should not be seen as weakness. And 1, 2, 3, these are the points. It should not be seen as the weakness. And then you come to the importance of compassion in the working environment. Yes, you can write. You can write as an example. When a boss is seen as compassionate, he's seen as weak. You can use that. So it is building a story. How do you build a story? You define compassion. You say it is seen as a sign of weakness. However, it is not a weakness. 1, 2, 3 point. And then you say that it is important for the working environment. And then how do you inculcate compassion? Is it clear? Is the structure fine? So this we call as, you read between the lines. It is important to have a flow in essay. It is also equally important to have a flow in your answers. Okay, kahin se bhi random kuch bhi nahi lagna chahiye. Okay, so you build a storyline. You structure a storyline in your answer. In the structure, we started with the introduction. The introduction was definition. What is the definition of compassion? It is known as empathy in action. So in compassion, there is an urge to elevate, to reduce the suffering of the person concerned. Okay, so there's an urge to help. There's an urge of action. So it is known as empathy in action. A very crisp definition of compassion, it is known as empathy in action with an urge to reduce the suffering of the other person. Okay, and then you write that compassion is seen as a sign of weakness. For example, if a boss is compassionate, he is seen as weak. Then you write, however, compassion should not be considered as a sign of weakness. So what do we mean by sympathy? Sympathy means feeling pity or sorrow. You just feel it. Okay. You feel sorrow for the hardship of the other persons. Yes? Yes. And empathy is sympathy more than sympathy. So empathy is you yourself put into the shoe of the other person and then you feel the pain. So there's a difference between feeling the pain. I might understand that you are under pain and sympathize with you, but the effect would not be as such till the time I put myself in your shoes and understand. So therein comes the element of empathy. Okay. Yes. So yes, sympathy is feeling the pain and sorrow. Empathy is putting oneself into the shoes of the person and then feeling the pain and the sorrow. And when it incorporates the urge of an action, then that becomes compassion. Okay. So you can say this. So it is compassion is equal to empathy plus action. Okay. Yes, yes. Okay. Then we come to the body part. Can you please provide why compassion should not be seen as a sign of weakness? Can you try answering in 1-2 points? Why compassion should not be seen as weakness? Why is compassionate not as a sign of weakness? 1, because it requires emotional strength. You need emotional strength to feel the pain of others. Okay, so you're talking about a strength. It is not a sign of weakness, emotional strength. Then it requires conviction and courage to act as a change agent. Okay, yes, helping in itself shows that you are in a position of strength. So if you want to help others, that means you are strong. You have what? You have emotional strength. What do you have? Conviction. Conviction to act as a change agent. Okay. It shows that you have high emotional intelligence to understand the emotion of others. A person with a weak emotional intelligence or low emotional intelligence cannot understand the pain of others. So a person with compassion has high emotional intelligence. Yes, it helps to build the moral framework of the other person. You write not only the building up of the other person, try to act moral, ethical, these things you try to write in your answers. Okay. So why should compassion should not be seen as a sign of weakness? We've talked about it. Then we talked about the main question, that is the compassion is an essential element to provide cognitive working environment. Okay. Which part of syllabus this working environment and compassion, where have they come from? Yes, foundational values. Yes, foundational values of civil servants. Yes. So it has come from the foundational value of the civil servants and the work culture. Work culture is the probity in governance. I have given a definition of work culture. So there's a difference between work culture and work ethics. Okay. So what is work culture? What do we mean by culture? Culture is day-to-day living. Okay. Day-to-day upbringing. So when it applies to the work, it becomes work culture. So what is work culture? It is set of practices, values, and shared belief. So whatever practices is taking place in the work, whatever the values are being followed at your workplace, and what is the shared belief? The shared belief of the employee, employers, and the other members of the organization, that is the set of the practices that are being followed by the employee in day-to-day decision making. So what happens in your day-to-day working? What are the values, the practices, the shared belief that are shared by all? That is known as work culture. What do we mean by work ethics? Work ethics is very individualistic. It is dependent on the person, the values that a person follows while doing work. Some may value punctuality, some may value dedication, some may value other things. So that becomes work ethics. It is very individualistic. Whatever the dedication or the commitment I would show towards my work shows my work ethics. Okay. So work culture is for an organization. Work ethics is for an individual. Now the main question was that compassion is an essential element for better work culture. Okay. For a better work culture, we need compassion. Such a question can be asked in UPSC, or they can ask you, and honesty is essential component of work culture. Integrity is an essential component of work culture. Selflessness is an important component of work culture. So how do you actually make a generic thing which you can apply in your examination? So when you think, how do you think for such questions? Think for such question that of work culture को कितने में तोड़ सकते हैं? What do we mean by work culture? And then how do I put out of every time while I'm justifying, how do I put the value that has been asked in the question in my point? For example, अगर selflessness पूछा है तो work culture में मैं कैसे डाल सकता हूँ? Honesty पूछा है तो मैं कैसे कर सकती हूँ? ऐसे आपको देखना पड़ेगा. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is think of the keywords, think of the stakeholders in the work culture. So what happens is, so what all comes under work culture? In the work culture, think of the stakeholder. Work culture from the perspective of a worker, from an employee, from shareholder perspective, from stakeholders perspective, from customers perspective. So what do we mean by good work culture? In the good work culture, these are the elements. Okay. The elements of good work culture is between the workers. So what is the culture between the workers? Do I respect the fellow worker? Do I actually, whenever there is some conflict between the worker, do we resolve it amicably, or do we actually, do not solve it amicably? Do we respect each other for others' work? Okay. Am I a good leader? What do we mean by good leader? That I have a vision, I give credit of success to all, and take failures credit on myself. That is accountability also, right? Do we follow team spirit? If everything is good, that means that is a good work culture. So, in a work culture, there are certain keywords that you have to keep in mind to understand that what do we mean by work culture. So these are the keywords you can keep into mind. Okay, this was only within the workers. So other element of work culture is, yes, other element of work culture is between the workers and the management. The management promotes on the basis of merit or some other condition. Is the management compassionate enough to follow my grievances, to address my grievances? Is the management compassionate enough to distribute the profit in an equitable manner? Okay. Is the management compassionate enough to think of all the stakeholders and not only shareholders? Okay. So all this requires compassion. Yes. So you try to have these points and then try to link your values to these points. Okay. So work culture between the workers and the management, and between the company and the customers. Okay. Are we delivering the goods better? Better service delivery? Are we actually redressing the grievances of the customer? Is employee participating in all the decision making, or is it only the management which is taking all the decisions? Okay, so these are the keywords for the work culture. Then you can not only talk about compassion, but link any value with these keywords. Is it fine? Do you understand how do we think in such questions? You can write about a counter viewpoint also, but you try to write about the counter viewpoint just before the conclusion in one simple short para. Because the question says discuss, a question asked is, because the question is about discuss, should I write about a counterpoint that yes, sometimes compassion can be considered as a sign of weakness, because if we actually give charity from our own pocket every time, it might become unsustainable. You can link it, but downplay it. Do not give too much importance to this thing, right? And my suggestion would be, yes, you can also talk about other values. You can also talk about the other values. See, if the question was critically discuss, then you might write about limitation of compassion. But you can also have a counter viewpoint saying that not only compassion, but other values are also important for the good working culture, like probity. We need probity, right? So you can write about these values, but how much of the importance, how much of the weightage you have to give in your answer, that depends upon the wisdom, your wisdom, and the framing of the question there. Okay, have you understood that how do we think on such questions? Like work culture se koi bhi value puchi, so on what lines will you think of work culture? Is it fine? Some examples of good work culture. I have written 4. You may provide many. You can tell कि और क्या हो सकते हैं. सेवोत्तम model, ठीक है? It is focusing on the better service delivery. You can talk about Tata's, Infosys, Tesla. This example can be used to substantiate your point. Okay. Yes, it's very important to promote informal work culture. Hierarchy nahi honi chahiye. There should be no hierarchy that you cannot approach your boss for a grievance. So that should be very, it has to be an informal work culture, but does not mean that you compromise the respect or the dignity of the other people. Yes. So Google is an example given by many. Citizen charter. Can citizen charter be used? Yes, citizen charter can be used because you will improve your service delivery if you actually give commitments. So citizen charter can be one of the element. Okay, so how we are talking about conclusion. Okay, conclusion. How do you inculcate compassion? Okay, you might write, when we are talking from the workplace atmosphere, you have to talk about code of conduct, code of ethics. So in the code of ethics, one important value can be compassion. Compassion, if a company actually promotes compassion, it will help. So you can write about, in code of ethics, compassion can be one of the values. You can talk about value education in the business schools, so that to have a better atmosphere in the workplace. You can talk about managers themselves leading by example. Okay, so Azim Premji donating the wealth, right? So it is leading by example. So you can talk about that. How do you inculcate compassion? You inculcate compassion via these things.